Hey there, David Chesworth coming to you again for another episode of Health Talk, and today we're here sitting in the Kumbaya Lounge in the Sweetgrass Inn at Hilton Head Health, and today we have a very special guest, Dr. Howard Rankin. Howard is the host of a radio show called The Miracle Within, UK health radio station. He actually had me on recently as one of his guests. He's the author of several books, ghost author of many, and actually between the years of 1987 and 1995, this is pretty cool, he was clinical director right here at Hilton Head Health, although back then called Hilton Head Health Institute. And he has also just helped many people in one-on-one settings, small group, motivational speaking, you name it. He's helped many people on their quest to change behavior for the greater of their health. So, Dr. Howard Rankin, thank you for joining us today. Did I miss anything in that intro?
No. Well, yeah, plenty, but we can get into that.
Okay.
Thank you for having me on the show, David. Really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, and I know that we've met several times before, and of course I was on your show, and our Director of Education, Bob Wright, I know that you've worked closely with him. He talks very fondly of you. He's worked very closely with you.
Absolutely, and Bob's a great guy.
Yeah.
And as so many of you are here, it's a great place. Really is a great place.
It really attracts a certain kind of person, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does, and it's amazing. As you say, I was here actually 86. So I worked here for 10 years, came back for a couple of years, and been in touch. So I've seen the evolution of the place and really like the way it's evolved over time, to keep up with it times and to keep up with the science of what we know about being healthy. You know, that is important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, well, before we dive into the science of behavior change and being healthy, just so our audience who may not know who you are, get to know you a little bit better, how did you come to be where you are today? In fact, I'm taking this question from your interview with me. I like that starting point. So how did you come to be where you are today?
So after I completed my master's degree in clinical psychology at the University of London, I found a job on the addiction research unit. That was one of the leading addiction places in the country. And at that time, early 70s, psychologists were just getting involved in addiction research. Up to that point, it had really been medical and sociological, but now psychology was getting involved, and did a lot of interesting work there, behavior change and so forth. And in, I'm thinking somewhere in the early 1980s, I went to a NATO conference in Norway on addiction, where I happened to meet Peter Miller, who at that point in time had just come from his academic spot at the University of Mississippi to Hilton Head to start what was then called the Sea Pines Behavioral Institute, the beginning of H3. And we met and we became friends. And after a few years, once the place had really got up and running and doing well, he invited me to come to be the clinical director. And so I, always being an Americophile, more about that if you want, I jumped at the opportunity and came to this amazing place in Hilton Head, and just loved the evolution of what Peter Miller originally had in mind.
So my understanding correctly that Dr. Peter Miller, the guy who started the original version of Hilton Head Health, his offer for you to become clinical director here is the reason you moved to the United States?
Correct.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, but one of the things you should know is that as a relatively young child, I was an Americophile. Actually, I was a sports fan.
What is that word?
Americophile. I loved America.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Okay. And the reason was I love sports. I was into sports, played all sports. I had a radio in my room. And one night, I guess I'm 10 years old, I'm listening to the radio, and I pick up the Armed Forces Network out of Germany. And it's a baseball game. Well, what's this? I don't know. Nobody knew anything about baseball in England. So I started listening, and I became an avid fan. And at that time, in the early 60s, the Dodgers, LA Dodgers, were very successful. So they were on a lot. And they became my team. And so I actually still have somewhere some scorecards of games that I listened to, like at 2 o'clock in the morning, following sports. And fast forward a few years, when I just finished my junior year in high school, there was an opportunity to be an exchange student in the United States. Oh, It was a very short window. And I applied. And actually, this is one of the better stories I have. So I applied. You had to write an essay about America. What do you think? What do you know? And in this essay, I obviously referenced I love baseball. Now, really, in the 1960s, somebody in England knows anything about baseball? So I had to go and do an interview with some people at the American Embassy. And so this guy looks at me and says, "Oh, you like baseball, huh? So who do you think the best pitcher is then?" And I didn't miss a beat. Oh, I said, "Come on, Bob Gibson, 27-9, 1.12 ERA, 382 strikeouts."
Oh, wow.
The guy almost fell off his chair. Anyway, I was fortunate enough to actually be selected. And then they had to find a family for me somewhere in the U.S. And just as time was running out, I got this call. "Yes, you're going." "Where am I going?" "Los Angeles."
Wow.
Yeah. Actually, a beautiful part of Los Angeles called Palos Verdes, which is in the beautiful hills overlooking L.A. And I had a fantastic time. So, that's my relationship with the United States.
Has started young.
Started young, just continued. And so it was no surprise to me or anyone else who knew me that I would take a job offered to me.
Gotcha. Very cool. So when the opportunity came, you're like, absolutely.
I'm off.
I'm going there. And hence you've stayed ever since.
I have stayed here ever since. Absolutely.
And so now, what are you doing these days? I mean, you're obviously the host of The Miracle Within on UK Health Radio.
Yep.
What else are you doing?
I'm actually a Psychology Today blogger.
Okay.
So I write articles for Psychology Today, which is fun. I also work with a AI company, a predictive analytics company called H3ALTH AI, where I'm the science director. And we combine human and artificial intelligence. And the perspective we
Sounds
have...
so futuristic.
Yeah, well, yes and no. I mean, back in the 1960s, there was a guy called Hubert Dreyfus, a professor at Cal. And he said, he wrote a paper, why computers need bodies in order to be intelligent. Mm-hmm. In other words, that, logic and reasoning and all this stuff up here is just one thing, but it's not the whole story, right? Our whole body is giving us information. Our sentience is giving us information. Intuition. Our body is our subconscious. There's tons of information that inform us about what's going on, what's the context. And so this notion is, well, you have all the data, have enough data. You never have all the data. If you have enough data, you can work it out. No. There's something more deeper than that. And so this combination of, collecting all that data and doing some regression analysis is cool, but you also need something more than that. You also need some context. You need perception. You need intuition. And this has just been fascinating, writing about that, working on that, giving talks about that, because I do think it's a misunderstanding people have. We overvalue, the mind and logic and reasoning. There's clearly a place for it, but it's not everything.
So what exactly is the end product of fusing AI with artificial intelligence with human intelligence? What does that look like?
Ideally, you get the best of both worlds. Okay, you get, obviously AI can accumulate masses of data much quicker than a human being could do, so that's fantastic, and could do the regression analysis. But then it needs a different perspective on that. That's great.
Yeah.
But it needs more than that. For example, if you're a football fan, you hear a football commentator, or actually any sports, but let's stick with football. Well, the Kansas City Chiefs have beaten the New York Giants. The last 15 years they played them, Yeah. That's their chance of winning the game. That must be 99. That's irrelevant data.
Right.
What's more important is how are the quarterbacks' fitness? Who's playing, who's not playing?
Yeah.
What's the mental state? What's the weather like? I mean, there's a gazillion other factors that go into that.
Right.
So just past history and past regression is not enough. And in fact, what we do is when data stops being relevant, we discard it. which makes sense.
Yeah.
Just because it happened 28 years ago, why is that relevant now?
Right.
And so we believe that that is important in the understanding of context and then prediction to what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so this combination we have of AI and human intelligence makes 150 predictions out into the future, is consistently getting data and updating it. And when any of those predictions hit a high probability, it issues alert, which could be sell this stock or buy this stock or bet this team or whatever it is.
Yeah. Okay. So you kind of give consult for stuff like that.
Yes. Yeah. And we've got an app out that will go on the market. Is now actually available, H3ALTH.com. You can look at the app and you can actually access the predictions we're making. Of course, in an election year, we're making
pretty big predictions.
So that's interesting to look at that updated, on a regular basis.
I'm going to check out that app.
Yeah, that's good. Intuality AI.
So, okay, so you've got a pretty cool background. I mean, not only do you have a background of working with guests here, but you've got the background of artificial intelligence, human emotion, the human mind, behavior change. And so behavior change is the next topic I want to touch on. And, I mean, you know this. You worked here and beyond. I know this. I've been here now for a little while. Why is it that for many people, behavior change is so challenging?
I think for a number of reasons. Again, it comes down to the underestimation of things that we don't know about and the overestimation of things we think we know. So we don't understand the mind-body, really. It is amazingly complex, incredible. We can go into that a bit. And so it is your subconscious. I really believe that. Other people have said
your
that.
Body is your subconscious?
Your body is your subconscious. It is sending trillions of bits, communicating unbelievable ways, every millisecond. Mm-hmm. Incredible. And some of those come into consciousness, which give you the feelings. Some of them don't, but you still get the feelings, don't know what it is, and so on and so forth. So I think we underestimate that aspect of it. And so we do not understand when we've been doing something for years and years on a repetitive basis, that's conditioned our body, not just our minds. Mm-hmm. And in fact, in your brain, you now have a neural infrastructure that underpins that behavior. Mm-hmm. So it's, I love sweets. I'm going to eat. Look, you're not thinking about it.
Right.
You're on automatic pilot. Right? Mm-hmm. You are on automatic pilot. You reached out and picked it up before you even thought about it.
Mindless eating.
Mindless eating. Literally mindless eating. And so just saying, okay, well, I'm going to make a decision to quit whatever. Yeah, you've got to make that decision. But that's not enough. That is nowhere near enough. That's a start.
Right.
And what you have to do is you have to break down all this neurological and physical conditioning that underpins the automaticity of that behavior. Now, again, this could be good behavior, it could be not so good behavior. I mean, Joe Montana famously said, when I was playing, I wasn't conscious. Now, he didn't mean he was in a coma. Right. What he meant was, I let my trained mind-body that I'm working just throw the ball, hand it off, or what have you. Because he couldn't stop and consciously think about, well, he's moving there, he's moving. You don't have time to do that. Right. Just like you don't have time to hit a 90-mile-an-hour fastball. You can't think, let's see where. No, so this is automatic. Mm-hmm. And those things we do, whether we've trained ourselves to be, a great eater or a great football player, it's really the same. Yeah. We've conditioned ourselves. And what has to happen is you have to eventually put yourself in those situations and not do that behavior, okay? Mm-hmm. To break down the automaticity, right? Mm-hmm. And so that when that automaticity is broken down, suddenly you feel you have more conscious control. Suddenly you find yourself, wait a minute, do I really want to eat that? I thought I wasn't going to eat that, okay? More and more, eventually, you get control, the automaticity breaks down, now you've got a real chance of breaking that behavior. One of the other things I do is I work for a porn recovery group, which is really interesting.
Oh, what kind of recovery?
Porn.
Gotcha.
Guys trying to get off porn.
Yeah.
And
it's a problem for a lot of people.
25% of downloads on the internet are for porn.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And amazingly, some of these guys, most of them, they got into it when they were like 10 years old.
Oh, wow. Pretty young.
You know, they saw magazines lying around.
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy. And now it's, just to the tip of your
click
fingers,
away.
Click away. So it's really interesting, and it's the same thing. And of course, working with them, I constantly...
That dopamine response?
Dopamine response. Make me feel good.
Yeah.
Make me feel good. Okay. And it's interesting because it comes exactly with all the problems of habit change. Okay. Mm-hmm. I had one guy, he'd been in the program 3 months, and he said, "Oh, Dr. Rankin, I'm telling myself I screwed up last week. I used, I didn't want to. I'm mad at myself." Wait a minute. You've been in the program 3 months. That's the first time you used, right? Once in 3 months? In the 3 months before, how often were you using? Oh, pretty much every day. I said, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
You went from like 99% to like 1.5%.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
It's pretty good improvement.
Don't beat yourself up. You're not going to be perfect. It is not going to be, I've made up my mind to eat healthily and that's it.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
It's so similar to, I'm sure you saw when you were here, they stick with the program and maybe on the weekend they go out to eat and feel like, I blew it. But it's like, well, to your point, the other 5 days you were doing great,
Right.
And if it was only once in a week, whereas it's usually every day in a week.
You're breaking that down.
Yeah.
You're breaking down that automaticity. And again, interestingly, related to this Paul group, one guy said, this week I was almost about to use and then I stopped. And I thought, wait a minute, I don't want to do this. His conscious control was coming back. Or, he was getting it.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't have conscious control, you can't control everything.
Right.
But as you get it and it develops more and more, that's where you develop control. That's where you really see the progress from, hey, you know what? I'm back in control of this.
Gotcha. Is that a more in-depth technical way of describing what a habit is, what you just said there?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And the unfortunate thing, one of the myths, and I did write a Psychology Today piece about this, one of the myths of addiction, is this notion that I should be perfect. I decided to stop smoking, drinking, whatever. No, it's progress, not perfection. And the problem with that is people do not give themselves credit for their wins. Mm-hmm. Like this guy, I screwed up. Give yourself credit for the, 88 days you didn't use out of 89.
Yeah.
Give yourself credit.
I'm curious, is this program that you do, is it a social, like other people are involved too, or is it all one-on-one?
The program is an amazing program, and it's called Elevated Recovery, and it offers a tremendous set of tools for people. Mm-hmm. And there's the opportunity for one-on-one counseling, and also we do a group as a regular group that I do, which is always great. I love groups. I think they're really powerful when they're run properly.
Yeah. Well, the reason I ask is because, here we've got that group setting environment, and whereas someone might be really hard on themselves, that same person might see the bright side in someone else who experienced the same exact thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you see that?
Absolutely. And that's actually what I say to people. Suppose your buddy had said to you what you just said to yourself, what would you say to him?
Yeah.
And you'd probably say, you're being way too hard on yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
You've been doing great.
Externalize it. Externalize it. Because there is part of you that is a sort of like a persona associated with your habit, right? Mm-hmm. And I actually believe that. I've done work, actually in my clinical career, helping people with multiple personality was really interesting.
Oh, wow.
And what was interesting is their alter egos typically had very characteristic physical things like the tone of voice, even physical symptoms like a headache or what have you.
Wow.
And that got me thinking, yeah, sure, that's sort of severe traumatic stuff. But it makes sense to think we get into a habit. Our mind and body is conditioned, right? Conditioned to act like that, right? So,
Makes sense.
okay.
When wires together, fires together.
Fires together, yeah, I like that.
Or fires, wires together.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like that. So, sometimes I like that. I eat anything I want. I tell myself it doesn't matter, or you can't do it anyway. A whole set of thoughts and behaviors and feelings go together. You have to break that up. So when you feel like that, you go do something else. Perhaps you go for a walk or exercise or talk to a buddy and be more positive. Break the persona up.
So what's an example of something so you gave the example of mindlessly eating. How does someone go from, what's the first step of going from mindless to starting to break that down?
I think the first step is understanding what we've just said. Okay. Progress, not perfection. Okay.
Yeah.
Understand that. Understand that every time you successfully resist, you're breaking down the infrastructure. There is a physical neural infrastructure that needs to be broken down. You can't just talk yourself out of it, okay, with repetition. And so it's looking at progress and seeing this as progress, not beating yourself up if you give in, okay? Accepting you gave in, but not crucifying yourself. There's no need to do that. That's not helpful. All that tends to do is send you way back. Wait.
Sure.
Okay, I need to do better next time. What could I have done then so that I avoided that? Okay? Right. Learn from it. Learn from it. Don't beat yourself up over it, because that's useless. Right? And then you get into the victim mentality and I can't do this and, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And that is very important for me, I think, in any attempt to change a behavior or a habit. It is so important, and really change anything, it's so important to be 100% engaged and embodied and on board.
Yeah. You got to be bought in.
Absolutely.
When we were talking on your show, you used the word embody. So it's interesting how on one hand, it's like you're proposing don't have an all or nothing mindset with how well you're doing. But on the other hand, go all in with believing that this is the right path.
And that you can do it.
So how do you go from complete self-doubt to completely believing that you can do it? Completely embodying that.
Right. And I think part of it is understanding that's what it is, right? Rather than the first mistake is, oh, God, I can't do it. Is understanding that it's a journey. It's going to be tough, particularly at the beginning, but it's going to get easier, and you're going to do this. And I believe, really, to be successful at anything, and as you knew from my show, I've happened to encounter numerous people who were given fatal diagnoses of different things, and they all survived and thrived. And they all did different things, but the one thing they had in common was, no, I'm not. I'm not going to die.
They were stubborn.
They were stubborn, yeah. I'm going to fight this.
Yeah.
I'm going to fight it as much as I can all the way.
Yeah.
And, all these different people from different backgrounds with different illnesses and so forth. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And again, we have to be careful here. We don't want to offer people false hope, but we always want to give them the opportunity of, hey, it ain't over till it's over.
Right, yeah.
And while you're still breathing and kicking,
right,
if you take this on, I personally believe your chances of healing are significantly improved. Now, that doesn't mean you'll completely heal.
Right.
Or, and sometimes you see this where people have got a fatal prognosis, and they take this on, and they do really well for 2 or 3 years, then it comes back and they die. But those 3 years have been amazing for them.
Quality.
Ah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Life in the years, not years in the life. Right?
That's right. To quote a friend of yours.
Yes. Indeed. He happens to be Dr. David Katz, but that actually was, I believe, Abraham Lincoln.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That was the first one who said that.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Bob quotes Dr. David Katz so many times that I could have sworn that was.
Well, he does use that a lot.
He uses it a lot, but he wasn't the first.
No. I think Uncle Abe told him.
Oh, wow. I love that. So, but what you're saying, the point of what you're saying is not that believing and giving your best foot forward is a guarantee, but that it's a valuable ingredient.
Massive.
Yeah.
Massive. You can't guarantee it, but it's your best shot. It's your best chance.
Right.
And amazing things happen.
And even with something as not quite as immediately fatal
Right.
as changing a habit.
Yeah. Yeah. And the amazing story, I happened to write a book about this with this woman, and it's the second episode on The Miracle Within You. This woman caught the H1N1 virus in 2009.
Yep.
Heart and kidneys failing. Heart was 10% ejection fraction. Mm-hmm. She needed a heart transplant. Doctor said, no, they put her in hospital and put her in a coma. Her fiance, her sister, her parents came there making funeral arrangements. Mm. She comes out of the coma after 2 weeks. And she has a sort of memory of all these dreams that she had while she was in this coma that seemed to be related to what was going on. So when they first got her, they were constantly cardioverting her, putting electricity in her heart to keep her alive. And she was dreaming about driving down the road looking for electricity.
Oh, wow.
Amazing stuff. Yeah, and so there was a number of dreams like this. And in one of the dreams, she gets a package from, I think it's her mother, and it's a video that says, if you watch this video, you'll be the most beautiful woman in the world. But you'll die within 24 hours.
So she didn't watch it.
She did watch it.
She did watch it.
And then she sees herself dead in the dumpster.
Oh, wow. In her dream.
In her dream. And then a satanic figure comes to her. An older guy says, okay, you're done, you're useless. Come follow me. I'll look after you. And she almost does the deal, but reneges at the last minute. Okay. And the next dream is she sees a sort of angelic figure, tells her that she'll see through different eyes and her heart will be healed. So she wakes up now. And a cardiologist comes, oh my God, well, you're still alive. We got to do testing on you quick. We got you down to the imaging. So they take her down, do the cardiology. He comes back and says, in my 40 years, I have never seen anything like this. Your heart is indeed healed. It's a heart of a 20-year-old. It's a heart we would actually transplant into someone. I can't explain it. And actually what I think happened in her coma dreams, I think she resolved actually some spiritual issues. She had a rather authoritarian dad, and then some issues there that were reflected in these dreams. And somehow that energized her whole body so that her heart was healed.
Wow.
That's as good an explanation as there is, because there isn't a classical medical explanation to explain how that happened. And when you understand the complexity of intercellular communication, you understand that's possible. That is possible. The intercommunication that goes on within our body is simply staggering. Cells communicating with very specific other cells, sending them very specific messages of what to do, when, how, and why. Very specific, 3 feet away. How do they know that? How do they know how to do that?
Yeah.
But they do that all the time. And what we've learned is not just synaptically, going wirelessly.
Cells communicate wirelessly.
Right. Mind-blowing stuff. So, we only have, about 40,000 connections between your heart and your brain. So that's really not a lot. Well, it's not a lot unless there's wireless communication going on. Then who knows how big that is, right?
Right.
And just amazing stuff comes from a guy called John Leaf, Dr. John Leaf, Lieff. He was actually the first person I interviewed on my radio show. And he has an amazing book called The Secret Language of Cells, which literally, even for somebody like me, who knew a bit about this stuff, just mind-blowing. Just mind-blowing what those cells can do. And I actually see the future of medicine will be knowing which cells communicate in what way to which other cells and simulating that somehow.
To test it out.
Well, no, to cure. Okay,
to cure things.
You know, you need to get your immune cells to do this in this area right now. So let's set all that in process
gotcha.
once we've understand it, and we'll do it for you. And one thing that people don't understand is the immune system really is the predominant system in your body. Think about it. Survival is the most important thing. And so when you have an illness, when you have an injury or what have you, your immune system takes over. It has to.
Mm-hmm.
It needs all the resources. And it actually tells the neurons in your brain to shut down. I need all the resources and energy.
Hence why you become foggy-brained when you're sick.
That's exactly right. Why you become foggy-brained when you're sick. Exactly. But think about that at perhaps a less acute level. Let's suppose you've got an immune system going on that's taking your energy away and making you feel kind of lethargic. Not quite sick, but kind of lethargic and what have you. The immune system contributes to mood.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So are you suggesting that sometimes your immune system is working too much when it doesn't need to be, which can bring your mood down?
Yeah, and in fact, that is something we found. Autoimmune diseases are very common in people who've suffered severe childhood trauma.
Is that right? So maybe this is a hypothesis, or maybe
Right.
you're going to say you've heard this, if you resolve childhood trauma, it could potentially tell your immune system to behave differently?
Yes, potentially.
Or have you seen that?
Yes.
You have seen it?
Yes, I have. I think trauma needs to be resolved. Otherwise, it is imprinted in your system, mind and body, which are one system.
How do you know if you have trauma? There's probably degrees of it.
Degrees of it.
How do you know that it's lingering, it's negatively impacting you?
I think part of it is to do with your thoughts and your moods, anxiety, depression, particular situations that are very troublesome and you want to avoid, things you don't
Get triggered easily by
things, and you may not know what this was a trigger. Let's suppose you were physically attacked in a park, and thrown, into a bunch of tulips, when you were 4.
Tulips could trigger you.
I've had that with people.
Wow.
I've had that. They say, I don't understand, but whenever I get near this flower, I kind of get edgy. And it was related, associated with a trauma they had not processed.
So in a scenario like that, how much of resolving that trauma is just getting more comfortable around tulips? Or is it deeper than that?
Well, it's deeper than that. I think part of it, it is. Part of it is going back and resolving the trauma, which means sort of re-experiencing it now through your eyes today and looking at it. Because if you don't do that and you've never done that, you'll experience it, and tulips in this case, just like you did at the moment of trauma. Mm-hmm. You need to step back from that, look at it, put that perspective on, resolve it. Now you understand it. Now it's no longer a problem. And I've seen, some of the most amazing cases of people who just changed so dramatically when severe trauma has been resolved.
So basically you're looking at it from a very objective, curious lens. Is that what you mean by step back and look at it through your eyes?
Yes.
Okay. Because could you look back at it and not resolve it? Or is it inevitably going to be resolved if you look at it?
No, it won't necessarily be resolved if you look at it. If you look at it, you might be terrified and run away. Yeah. But you've got to be guided through that. Mm-hmm. It's not happening right now. Tell me exactly what you see, What can you see? And then remember different things, different emotions, different things. And then you talk through that and be able to put it in context and not be frightened of it. That's the problem, the avoidance. Because if you're frightened of it, you're never going to talk about it or think about it. And you're going to be stuck, right?
Would you say it's kind of like this is definitely not my area, so I'm trying to understand it a little better.
Okay.
Would you say that it's kind of like if you have a irrational fear of elevators and you just slowly get closer to an elevator, is re-looking at the trauma kind of a way of emotionally like getting closer to it, and then the closer you get to it, maybe you get more comfortable with it? Is that a fair analogy?
Yeah. And then you need support going through that. But yeah, that's the process of let's go back. What do you recall? What do you see? You know, sometimes people see things they didn't know because they never wanted to think about it. Right.
That's why it's good to have a professional guiding you through it.
Right. And talking of elevators, I do have a fun story. I was trying to work with two women who had fear of elevators, and so we were going in the elevator and going up and down, what have you. This one time, they got in the elevator, I got distracted, and the elevator door shut, and I wasn't there. And up went the elevator. Oh my God. Oh no, they're probably freaking out. I run up to the second floor, the elevator's going up to the...
So you're running up all these stairs.
I'm freaking out. Eventually I catch up to them, they're sitting down, and they're laughing. And I said, what happened? They said, your face when the door closed. You should have seen it. And so they went up laughing instead of panicking.
Oh my! So now when they think of elevators, they think of your face.
Exactly. So,
ironically, now you have a fear of elevators.
Or leaving people.
Or leaving people in elevators.
Yeah. So and so, you know, part of that is, I mean, that's just a happenstance of how people can have a different experience in a situation. But that's also part of it. And one of the things that I learned in my practice, you know, here I am trying to change people's behavior. Doing it 20 years. Nobody's ever taught me anything or suggested I do anything about communication.
Like how the individual communicates with others?
How I communicate with them.
Interesting.
Right? So
that wasn't part of the training.
It wasn't part of the training.
Wow.
Maybe now, but not so much. So, you know, it used to be somebody comes in and they want to, hey, doc, I want to quit smoking. Okay, well, yeah, of course you need to do that because, you know, blah, 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 blah. No. My first question became, why the hell do you want to quit? I want to know what's in their head, not my head. What I think doesn't matter.
Yeah.
What's in their head, right?
Yeah.
That's important. And you need to understand how to communicate with people, to get them to see things differently, to convey things authentically, right? And there are, you know, some amazing techniques for doing that, which are really cool and really have helped me in my career in communicating with people, whatever it is. And that is important. That is important. That's such an important part of it. And I was reading recently about doctor-patient interaction, and the main reason why patients quit their doctors, do you know why?
Poor communication?
Yeah.
Poor bedside manner?
Yeah, absolutely. Poor communication. Yeah. The doctor comes and says, okay, well, let's have a look. Oh, well, you've got this disease. Normally we prescribe this for it. And, you need to cut back on this. I'll write the prescription for you. Come back in 3 months. No. That's not
a robot. Yeah.
No, exactly. Yeah. You're not a robot. Unfortunately, doctors typically don't have time unless they're concierge or what have you, where that's the benefit of it. You really get their time, get involved in where are you at? Are you really engaged in this? Because there's a difference between an idea and a concept and the engagement and embodiment of it.
Right.
And that has to be the goal, I think, to get people really engaged and embodied and excited about it.
Well, in the example you gave of communication, it was maybe like a tactical question to get them to tell themselves, and maybe the more they tell themselves, the more they'll embody it.
Yes,
is that
exactly.
Kind of the...
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and you see how far they need to be pushed or guided to get there, you know. And
that's basically, so I took a health coaching course, and it was virtually all about asking open-ended questions. But then also, you know, the right kinds of open-ended questions.
Yeah. And there's a famous psychiatrist called Milt Ericson. He died not that long ago, but he's amazing. He created some communication strategies. And he said that if you smack somebody, challenge them right there, their defenses go up, forget it.
Yeah.
You've lost them. They've cut off. There's no point doing that.
Yeah.
No point doing that whatsoever. Okay? You've lost them. It's a waste of time. And there's a book, I'm trying to remember who it was written by. It was a great book about Milt Ericson. And there's some great stories in there of how he used this in very clever ways. My favorite example is a woman came to see him, and she was very frigid. Anything sexual freaked her out. And he found out that when she was 12, her mother died. And, before she died, perhaps when she was 10 or 11, she told her daughter that sex was evil and terrible. You never do it. Okay, now, put yourself in Erickson's position. Now, the natural thing is to say, well, wait a minute. Your mom was clearly neurotic about that. That's crazy. But her mom's died and glorified. She will not accept that message. Don't talk about my mom like that, right?
Sure, yeah.
So that doesn't work. So what do you have to do? Is what he did. He said, you know what? Your mama's absolutely right. Sex is evil, terrible, you shouldn't do it. When you're 11 years old. Unfortunately, she didn't live long enough to give you the 15-year-old message, the 20-year-old message, and the 25-year-old message about sex. And here's what I think she would have said. Brilliant. Now he's got his mom.
It's like we're on the same team here.
They're on the same team. Now we're all together as a team.
And did that work?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. And, so many of us, we all have, these ideas and concepts. Where do they come from? Who started them? We live in this creation that we've made. And, I dream maybe one time with the advancement of technology, you'll be able to say to Siri, where did I get this idea that? And it'll say, oh, well, you got that when you were 7 years old, and your mother told you this.
Well, so that the way you describe that, glorified, it's like, yeah, it's almost like in that scenario, that person, by continuing to view sex in that way, in a weird way, probably made her feel closer to her mom, and to change that would be like, I don't want to go away from my mom. Exactly. It's kind of like if someone were to, I guess, have a dessert that their mom or dad used to always make growing up, but their mom or dad, they're not going to stop having that dessert. Great
example.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's going to be a part of their life.
Absolutely.
So to try to stop having it would be a foolish.
Right. Well, perhaps seeing it more and perhaps saying, well, now, if they were here and seeing you're struggling a little bit with your health, they would probably say, please don't eat that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. They would want you to stick around.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Or instead of having it 7 days a week.
Right. They'd say just on Sunday.
Just 7, yeah. That's a real life. What would they say if they were still here? Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And people don't stop and ask themselves.
Yeah. And think critically about it.
They don't. We all do. That's where we all come from.
Yeah.
And the wisdom is understanding that and trying to look at it more objectively and rationally.
I love that. I'm kind of remembering an earlier part of our conversation where you were talking about like believing in yourself gives you a better chance. And there's actually a story that just kind of came to my mind as we've been exchanging stories of a guest probably like my second year working here. She comes up to me after a class and she goes, David, I got to tell you this story. She goes, it's a weird story. I was like, perfect. I like weird stories. And she said, well, I'm going to start by asking you this question. She goes, what do you know about fleas? I said, not much, just that they get on your pets, they're itchy, and they're not good. And she goes, yes, but did you know that fleas can jump 100 times their own height? And I said, I didn't know that. She said, yeah, so there's a tale of a scientist who was fascinated by the flea and wanted to study the flea. So he caught the flea in a jar. The flea jumped right out. So the scientist came prepared with a lid the next time. The flea couldn't get out. The scientist was studying, taking his notes. Now, why this was a good way to take notes on a flea, I don't know. But eventually the flea started getting tired, couldn't reach the lid anymore. The scientist felt guilty, so he took the lid off. Well, the flea still couldn't get out because whether it was too tired or it had learned defeat, whatever the reason, couldn't get out. So the scientist took the jar, did a follow-up experiment, said, I can't let the flea out without his full capabilities. So he puts the jar on a stove and slowly cranks up the heat. And notice the hotter that the stove got, the higher the flea jumped. And he did get it hot enough where the flea jumped out. And the guest said, I share that tale with you because I feel like right now I'm the flea.
Oh.
20 years ago, I could jump.
Oh, wow.
I was fit. I was active. I loved to ski.
Right.
But I was in a ski accident. And I was given a physical cap on what I could do.
Wow.
But here I am 20 years later. I've been through the surgery. I've been through the physical therapy. And it took bringing myself to a place like this where I realized the cap isn't there. I can jump again. And I thought that was such a cool story because it kind of, to your point, it addressed, well, I think it addressed both can and can't. Because the reality is there are things you can't do.
Right.
And maybe a tougher reality is sometimes there are things you can't do that you once could.
Right.
But in the story of the flea and of this guest, it doesn't do you any good to only focus on what you can't do because you might miss the things you can do.
That's exactly right.
And then if you do focus on what you can do, you'll have a higher quality of life and a better shot of going further than you ever could go before. And chances are if you hang out there, your horizon of things you can do will expand.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Change your mindset. Completely
Absolutely.
Positive. Yeah. So did you put her in the oven?
Yeah. I guess Hilton Head Health was kind of her oven. It heated her. That's so funny.
But your point is really a good one. I love the metaphor there too. Is people focus so much on what they can't do instead of what they can do. Mm-hmm. And, negativity tends to be absolute, right? You don't hear people say, well, I'm 28% angry right now. Right? It is.
I'm angry.
It tends to cloud everything. Mm-hmm. It's like a storm that takes out all the light. Mm-hmm. And so people focus too much on those negative thoughts, negative feelings, what they can't do. Well, it's like, what can you do? Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. You can walk. That's awesome. Yeah. Walking's really good for you.
Yeah. Would you say that, so you gave the analogy earlier of like the football player who come game time, they're on autopilot. Would you say that like an emotional strategy, because when you're angry you get fogged up, would be when you're not angry, practice the things that you would do to get out of anger so that when you are angry it's easier to get out of it? Is that part of what you would?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Definitely, anger is an interesting one. A couple of my favorite quotes on anger, Aristotle. Anyone can be angry, but to be angry for the right reason, with the right person, the right way, the right amount of time, it's not so easy. No, it is.
It's an art.
It's an art. And then the other one is the best revenge is to be unlike him who caused the injury, Marcus Aurelius. Okay. So actually, I'm just creating a webinar where I actually focus on anger to get people fired up. Okay. And
you want them to experience a healthy level of anger.
Anger's energy. We can use that energy, right?
Sure. Right? And harnessed in the right way.
So
how do you do that? How do you harness your anger in the right way?
Okay, so you take what I said. So anger is an alarm that somebody is treating you unfairly, or the perception that somebody. Well, use that energy to make you better, not waste it on trying to make them feel worse. Okay. Make you better. Right?
The best revenge is success, kind of energy.
Exactly. That's Marcus Aurelius. The best revenge is to be unlike him who caused the injury. And so as somebody who, mocks you for being overweight, don't waste your time yelling and screaming at them. Come back at them in a year's time looking different. Mm-hmm. There's your answer. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. There's no more satisfaction than that.
Right.
None.
To prove someone wrong.
Prove someone wrong. by improving yourself, not trying to knock them down. So anger can be very helpful if used in the right way.
How do you get yourself into that? Because to your point, it kind of clouds you. It can take over. It can hijack you. How do you get to the point where you hijack it?
Again, part of it is using it. And one of the things actually that I use in this webinar that I'm developing, well, what should make people angry? Well, how about food marketing, where we know the food industry has deliberately, through neuromarketing, which is targeting the areas of the brain and sending you commercials and all sorts of stuff that will make you impulsively want to eat their food. That is their goal. Food companies spend $14 billion a year doing that, which compared to the budget for treating chronic illness of $1 billion is a lot. $14 billion a year trying to hack your brain, literally hack your brain successfully so that you eat their stuff, which is actually killing you.
Right.
And they target young people, so they start early. Right?
Trying to get a customer.
They've moved their ads from TV to social media so that they can target that audience, get them young, get them hooked. Literally get them hooked.
You got people angry already.
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. And it's weight, when we're talking about weight loss, I think there's so many myths about that. Being overweight is a sign you are unhealthy. It is a risk factor for diabetes, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, stroke. It is a risk factor on its own. You're overweight. This isn't about, so you're losing weight isn't really about, well, I want to look good for, that event coming up. And no, you're talking about saving yourself, adding years to your life, getting healthy, getting the control back that the advertisers have stolen from you. Get it back. Control. You have the opportunity to do that. That's up to you, because that's what it's about. And again, talking about David Katz, he talks about this. He says, well, all the things about cardiovascular disease and diabetes, I don't really go into it. I mean, being overweight is a factor in killing you. Okay? That's what it is. You're overweight, your health gone down.
Right.
And you're going to pay the price. And do you want to continually be manipulated, or do you want to take charge?
Right.
That's the message I would have.
And I think that the second half of that quote of adding life to your years, I think that that's something that, especially I think in younger people, they don't think about that side of it.
Absolutely.
In fact, some people are like, well, I don't want to live longer because I don't want to be sick for so long. Well, it's like, well, you might be.
Right.
You can't really, you might be.
Right.
So
exactly.
Why wouldn't you want to add more life to those years if you really think about it?
Right. And you see people, and again, I've interviewed these people. Fran Draz, amazing woman, got pancreatic cancer.
That's a brutal one.
Brutal one. Is in the hospital. First thing she does when she goes in the hospital, is there a pathway around here that I can jog in the morning? I say, what are you talking about? And also, do I have to eat in bed? Can I go eat somewhere?
Yeah.
She was determined. 20 plus years ago. She has now run a marathon in every...
She's alive?
Yeah.
Wow.
Marathon in every U.S. state, every Canadian province. She's 82 and she still runs marathons.
It's amazing. Is it possible to get that level of determination without something negative happening in your life to give you that anger energy that you're talking about?
Yes, I guess, but I do think that anger sometimes really can spark it.
Yeah.
Because now you're fighting something that's real and you can relate to it.
And when you have a fight, you've got a stronger sense of purpose.
Yeah, exactly. And you can beat it.
Yes.
And I'm going to beat it. I'm not going to let them win.
Well, Howard, I think I could talk to you for hours, but we are starting to run close to the end of our time. So I think we'll have to have you back sometime. You've got a wealth of knowledge and stories and information. But I do want to give you one last opportunity. Is there any books that you have or anything you want to share? How can people, stay in touch with you? And after that, any final words of wisdom you'd like to leave with the listener?
Well, I've got two websites, drhowardjrankin.com, which has got a lot of stuff about me, and then themiraclewithinyou.com. That will soon have some books of mine, products of mine that you can access. So there you can go on Amazon, and I have an author's page, and you can see some of the books that I've written. And the message is exactly what we've been talking about. Believe in yourself. Don't believe the hype. Don't be manipulated. Believe in yourself, because I think that when that happens, you give yourself the best chance of healing, recovery, and the best chance of a good life.
I can't think of a better way to wrap up this episode. Believe in yourself so you can fight the good fight. Well, thank you for joining us today,
Dr.
Howard Rankin. And thank you for watching today's episode. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. I know I personally did. And at the end of the day, remember that this podcast is ultimately for you. So be sure to comment. Let us know what you liked about this episode. Let us know what other topics you'd like to hear us talk about and who else you'd like to hear us talk to and have conversations with. As always, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.